Everyone thinks electric cars break down because the battery dies. That is the story you have been sold. And it is almost entirely wrong. Consumer Reports just published its 2026 reliability study. They surveyed the owners of roughly 380,000 vehicles, covering model years from 2000 all the way through early 2026. That is not a small sample. That is the largest ongoing automotive reliability study in the United States. And what it found is not a battery crisis. What it found is something far more systematic, far more expensive, and far more revealing about what the car industry has become. 7 of the 10 least reliable vehicles in America right now are either electric cars or plug-in hybrids. Not because of their batteries, because of something else entirely, something the manufacturers built into these cars deliberately, and something that will cost you money in ways that are almost impossible to predict before you buy. We are going to get to exactly what that is. But first, you need to understand what the data actually says, because most of what you think you know about this study is wrong. The headline number from Consumer Reports is this: electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids have about 80% more problems on average than gas-only cars, based on the 2023 through 2025 model years. 80%. That is not a rounding error. That is not statistical noise from a few bad models dragging the average down. That is a systemic pattern across the majority of the EV market, documented by the most credible independent automotive survey organization in the country. For comparison, regular hybrids, the non-plug-in kind, have 15% fewer problems than gas cars. So the same basic electric motor technology, when integrated carefully with a gasoline engine and without a charging system, is actually more reliable than a traditional car. The moment you add a charging port, a larger battery pack, and the software stack required to manage all of it, the problem rate nearly doubles. That gap is not an accident. That gap is a design choice. Now, here is the thing that almost nobody is talking about. The failures showing up in this study are not what you were afraid of. They are not stranded drivers with dead battery packs on the side of a highway. They are not the catastrophic 5-figure battery replacement bills that every EV skeptic cites in comment sections. Consumer Reports tracks 20 specific problem areas in its survey. The leading failure category across the entire new car market, for both electric and gas vehicles, is infotainment, software, screens. And according to the data from the companion JD Power 2026 Dependability Study, infotainment accounted for more than double the problem rate of the second highest category across the industry. The car did not break down. The computer in the car broke down, and that distinction matters enormously, because of who actually pays for it. Think about what a car was in 1985. It was a mechanical system. It had an engine, a transmission, a fuel delivery system, and a fairly simple electrical harness. When something failed, a competent mechanic with a set of hand tools and a service manual could diagnose it, order a part from a catalog, and fix it. The repair ecosystem was open. The knowledge was transferable. The parts were available. A carburetor from a 1979 Ford pickup could be rebuilt on a workbench with a kit that cost $12. None of that is true anymore. And with electric vehicles, it is even less true than it is with modern gas cars. Today's electric vehicle is not primarily a transportation device. It is a software platform that happens to move. The Chevrolet Blazer EV, the Cadillac Lyriq, the GMC Hummer EV, the Honda Prologue. All of these vehicles share General Motors' Ultium platform, which GM unveiled at what it called EV Day in March 2020 and positioned as the architecture that would, according to reporting at the time, challenge Tesla for the lead in EV sales before the end of the decade. By the end of 2023, GM's actual Ultium EV sales were 13,838 vehicles total. Of those, nearly two-thirds were a single model, the Cadillac Lyriq. The Blazer EV had to be placed under a stop sale order after deliveries began. Edmunds took delivery of a test vehicle, and reported that it spent more than 2 weeks at the dealer's service department in its first 2 months of ownership. Multiple owners described identical symptoms: infotainment crashing mid-drive, charging sessions that failed without explanation, warning lights for systems that were not actually malfunctioning. And what Consumer Reports found when it surveyed owners is that almost every model using the shared Ultium architecture, including the Chevrolet Blazer and the Cadillac Lyriq, scored below average or well below average for reliability. Here is the mechanism, and this is the part that will explain everything else. A modern electric vehicle contains somewhere between 50 and 150 separate electronic control units, which are small dedicated computers that each manage a specific subsystem. The battery management system is one, the charging control unit is another, the climate control, the drive motor, the driver assistance systems, the infotainment, the body control modules. Each one runs its own software. Each one communicates with the others over a high-speed data network inside the car. When the software on one module is at a different version than the software on the module it needs to talk to, the conversation breaks down. Not always, not predictably, randomly. You get a warning light on a system that has nothing physically wrong with it. You get a charging session that starts, runs for 4 minutes, and then stops with an error code. You get a car that cannot identify its owner's key fob standing 3 feet away. These are not mechanical failures. They are integration failures. And the Hyundai Ioniq 5, the Kia EV6, the Genesis EV lineup, all 3 brands share a component called the Integrated Charging Control Unit, the ICCU, which has been recalled across thousands of vehicles because failures in that unit can cause a complete loss of drive power while the car is moving. That is not a software glitch. That is a car stopping on a highway because a control unit that manages both charging and power delivery failed under load. Now we arrive at the question that has been sitting in the background since the beginning of this video. If the battery is not the main failure point, and the drive motors are largely holding up, then why are EVs scoring 80% worse for reliability than gas cars? The answer is complexity without maturity. And there is a very specific economic reason why it exists. The automotive industry made a collective decision in the late 2010s to accelerate EV development, not because the technology was ready to be deployed at scale, but because regulatory pressure, competitor announcements, and investor expectations created a race dynamic in which being late to market was perceived as more dangerous than shipping an unfinished product. The result is that millions of American consumers bought first-generation or second-generation versions of platforms that are still being debugged. General Motors launched the Ultium architecture, knowing it had software integration problems. The Blazer EV stop sale happened after customers had already taken delivery. Hyundai and Kia launched vehicles with an ICCU design that would eventually be recalled across multiple model years. These were not unknown problems. They were known problems that were shipped anyway, because the cost of delaying a product launch in a competitive EV market was judged to be higher than the cost of the warranty claims and the reliability surveys that would follow. This is where the economics become completely transparent. An automaker that ships a car with a software problem it knows about does not lose the sale. It earns a warranty cost. That warranty cost appears in an accounting line item as a future liability, not as lost revenue. The car was sold. The money was received. The cost to fix the car later is spread across a warranty reserve fund that was calculated into the original pricing model. What does not get calculated into that model, what the manufacturer does not absorb, is your time. The time you spend at the dealer waiting for a software update that takes 3 hours and may or may not fix the problem. The time your car spends in the service lane, while the dealer waits for a software-certified technician, because not every dealer has one, and EV repairs require specialized diagnostic equipment that most independent shops do not have. Mitchell, the collision and repair industry data firm, found in its 2025 analysis that 86% of EV parts dollars go toward OEM components, with only 13% of components deemed repairable rather than replaceable. For gas cars, 15% of components are repairable. The difference sounds small, but what it means in practice is that when an EV component fails, it almost always has to be replaced with an OEM part rather than rebuilt or substituted, which locks the repair ecosystem to the manufacturer's supply chain, the manufacturer's pricing, and the manufacturer's service network. The average new car in the United States now costs close to $50,000. Consumer Reports noted in its 2026 report release that prices have placed, quote, added pressure on car shoppers to ensure they're making a smart choice. That is a polite way of saying that you are spending $50,000 on a product that Consumer Reports' own data shows has an 80% higher problem rate than the alternative, and that when it breaks, it requires a specialist, an OEM part, and a dealer visit, in that order. The repair cost data confirms this pattern. Average repairable EV collision claims in the United States run around $6,200. Comparable gas vehicles average about $5,000. That is a 20% premium on repair costs, driven not by battery damage but by the sheer number of sensors, cameras, radar units, and control modules that must be replaced and recalibrated after even a minor impact. A parking lot fender bender that used to be a $500 bumper repair now triggers a cascade of sensor replacements and recalibration procedures because the radar and camera hardware sits inside that bumper. Insurance premiums on EVs are running 10 to 25% higher than comparable gas cars for exactly this reason. Here is the part that should make you genuinely angry. The brands that are scoring at the bottom of Consumer Reports' 2026 reliability rankings. Rivian, which ranks in the bottom 5 brands overall. The Rivian R1T, which is the least reliable vehicle in the entire study. Edmunds tested one and reported it registered 23 separate fault codes during the evaluation period and had to spend a month at the dealer getting them addressed. A month for a truck that starts above $60,000. And the Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis EVs, which Consumer Reports specifically identifies as the least reliable models from each of those brands, in large part due to the ICCU failures. These are not obscure, low-volume vehicles. These are mainstream products that are being marketed to mainstream Americans who are being told they are getting the future of transportation. What they are actually getting, in many cases, is a first-generation software platform with a hardware integration problem that the manufacturer already knew about when it shipped the car. The companies that are doing this well tell you exactly why the others are failing. Subaru topped Consumer Reports' overall brand reliability rankings for the second consecutive year. Toyota and Honda rank in the top 5. Lexus ranks third. These companies have something in common. They do not rush new architecture. They use shared components across their model lines. They make conservative, incremental changes. The Lexus RZ is the second most reliable EV in the survey. The Toyota hybrid lineup has been perfecting the same basic hybrid system for nearly 3 decades and now ranks consistently at the top. BMW ranks 5th overall, and its i4, i5, and iX all achieve average or above average reliability scores. The pattern is clear. Brands that treat reliability as a constraint that cannot be compromised to meet a launch date score well. Brands that treat reliability as a problem to be fixed after the product ships score at the bottom. This brings us to what you actually need to know as a buyer, because the Consumer Reports data is not a reason to avoid electric vehicles entirely. It is a map of where the danger zones are and why they exist. The most reliable EV in the entire 2026 study is the Tesla Model Y. Tesla has been building the same basic Model Y platform through iterative refinements since 2020. The architecture is mature. The software is mature. The service network understands the platform. That consistency is exactly what makes it reliable. The second most reliable EV is the Lexus RZ, which benefits from Toyota's engineering discipline applied to an electric platform. There are more than a dozen EVs in this year's survey that achieve average or better reliability scores. The problem is not electric cars. The problem is electric cars that were rushed to market on unvalidated software platforms by manufacturers who calculated that the cost of warranty claims was lower than the cost of being late. Do not buy the first model year of any new EV platform. The data on this is unambiguous. When a manufacturer launches a ground-up new architecture, reliability scores drop every time, without exception. The Mazda CX-90 and CX-70 were entirely new platforms for 2024 and 2025, and Mazda, which had been one of the most reliable automakers in the survey for years, dropped to become the lowest-ranked Japanese automaker. The same principle applies to EVs with even more force, because the software complexity means there are more things to get wrong, and the integration failures are harder to predict in controlled testing than they are in real-world use. If you want a reliable EV today, look for a model that has been on sale for at least 3 years with no major redesign. Look at the Consumer Reports score, not the road test score. A car can be excellent to drive and deeply unreliable. Kia's own EV6 was praised in road tests while receiving poor reliability projections because of ICCU failures documented in real-world ownership. The drive test and the reliability test are measuring completely different things. Understand that the repair ecosystem for your EV matters as much as the car itself. 13% of EV components are considered repairable rather than replaceable. 86 cents of every dollar spent on EV parts goes to OEM components. That means, when something fails, you are dependent on the manufacturer's supply chain, the manufacturer's pricing, and a technician who is certified to work on that specific platform. Before you buy, find out how many dealers in your area are certified to service that model. Find out what the typical wait time is for service appointments. This is not hypothetical. People with perfectly drivable cars are waiting weeks for service appointments because there are not enough certified technicians, because the industry scaled up sales faster than it scaled up the service infrastructure. The central truth that the Consumer Reports 2026 study reveals is not that electric cars are unreliable. It is that the automotive industry decided to monetize a technology transition faster than the technology was ready to be monetized, and it decided to let customers absorb the cost of that decision in the form of warranty visits, dealer stays, software updates, and reliability survey scores that confirm what you already suspected. The car you paid $50,000 for is a beta product. You are the quality control department. That is not a conspiracy. That is arithmetic. The company booked the revenue when you signed the paperwork. The warranty cost is a reserve entry on a balance sheet. Your time and your frustration are not on anyone's income statement. And that is not just a reliability problem. It is a disaster. Not for the technology, but for the buyers who paid full price for it. If a product has an 80% higher problem rate than its competitor, and costs more to repair when it fails, and requires a specialist to fix it, and depreciates faster than comparable vehicles, then the question is not whether it is a good product. The question is why you were told it was a finished product when the data shows it is still being built. That question has an answer. The answer is that the industry needed your money before the product was ready. And now you know it. If this kind of analysis is useful to you, subscribe. Every video on this channel is built the same way. Real data, real mechanisms, no guessing.